松田さん。
皆様、本日はお忙しい中ご参加いただきありがとうございます。司会を務めますジェトロベンガルール事務所の松田と申します。インディアイノベーションエコシステムエキシビションという本日のイベントですが、今回はエネルギー、気候テックを取り上げ、インドのイノベーションスタートアップ環境についてご紹介します。インドのスタートアップは約7万社、ユニコーンは100社を超え、世界第3のスタートアップ大国と言われますが、日本企業で現地のエコシステムに入りきれているという企業はまだまだ多くありません。そこでまずは市場理解として、インドのエネルギー気候テックについて、現地ベンチャーキャピタルのバラットファンドよりお話しいただきます。そして海外進出先としてインドを具体的に検討いただく手がかりとなるよう、先行事例のグローバル企業として、シェルのアクセラレーションプログラム E4 の担当者、そして実際にプログラムを受けているスタートアップ2社、プラニステクノロジーズと AP ケミに登壇いただきます。スタートアップの皆様には進出先として、また日系大企業等の皆様にはスタートアップへの出資や協業先として、インド・ベンガルールを考える一助になれば幸いです。なお、本日は MC およびジェトロからの事業紹介は日本語、インド側からのプレゼンテーションは英語で行わせていただきます。ご質問がありましたら、質問相手を明記の上、Q&A ボックスにご記入ください。ご質問は可能な限り英語でご記入ください。また、各登壇者へのコンタクトを希望される場合は、プレゼンの後にポールクエスチョンが表示されますので、そこでイエスを選択してください。ご質問者のメールアドレスをスピーカーに後日共有させていただきます。ウェビナー終了後に、Zoom ご退出直後に参加後アンケートが表示されます。皆様のご意見が今後のジェトロの活動にとって重要ですので、ご回答をお願いいたします。最後になりますが、本日の資料は後日参加登録いただいたメールアドレスにお送りさせていただきますが、一部共有できない資料もございますので、あらかじめご了承のほどお願いいたします。なお、本日のウェビナーは録画し、後日公開される可能性がありますので、ご了承ください。それでは、各スピーカーの前に、まずは少しだけジェトロのサポートスキームを紹介させてください。それでは、夏美さん、よろしくお願いします。
はい、ジェトロベンガルールの夏美と申します。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。今日はウェビナーの前にといいますか、今ベンガルールでやっているサポートプログラム2つ紹介させていただければと思っております。まず1つ目がグローバルアクセラレーションハブと申しまして、対象が日本のスタートアップになります。日本のスタートアップが例えばベンガルールに進出を検討する場合に、こちらの、なんて言うんでしょう、エコシステムの中のキープレイヤーといいますか、例えば当地のコンサルティング会社、ジノブだとか、MOU 締結先によるメンタリングだとか、もしくは市場調査みたいなものも簡単なものであれば可能になっております。また、提携可能性のあるインド企業とのマッチング等をやらせてもらっています。また、実際に日本のスタートアップがこちらに進出する場合にですね、例えばその MOU を締結しているインキュベ施設に入っていただく場合、そういう紹介もさせていただきますし、最初の3ヶ月の入居費を我々が負担するといいますか、そういったサービスをさせてもらっております。で、もう一つがJ ブリッジというプログラムになっておりまして、先ほどのグローバルアクセラレーションハブの対象が日本のスタートアップに限定されていたところ、こちらの J ブリッジについては、スタートアップだけではなくて、大企業さんだったり、もしくは大学や研究機関等も対象になってきます。で、なんて言うんでしょう。実際に日本のスタートアップが進出するだけじゃなくてですね、その業務提携とか技術提携、出資合弁企業の設立と、M&A だとか、いろんなものが対象になりますので、この J ブリッジというプログラムも皆さんに広く使っていただけるものと思っております。 で、先ほどこちらのMOU 締結先と連携して日本の皆様をサポートさせていただくとお伝えしましたけれども、こちら表示しているのが具体的な締結先になっておりまして、例えば左上のマズムダール社メディカルファンデーションであれば、医療デバイスだとかライフサイエンス、そういったものが対象になりますし、上の真ん中 C キャンプライフサイエンス、それから右側の BBC バンガロールバイオイノベーションセンター、それから左下のナスコムで、右下のミチェリオについてはイモビリティだとかいろんなこちらの現地のプレイヤーと MOU を結んで彼らが得意とするセクターについてしっかり支援ができるような体制を築いておりますので、ぜひぜひ皆様にも広く使っていただけたらと思っております。で、こちらがグローバルアクセラレーションハブを使って実際にベンガルールの地に来ていただいたスタートアップになっておりますので、参考にご紹介させていただきました。はい、私の、説明は以上になります。どうもありがとうございます。間違えた。
はい、夏美さん、ありがとうございました。それでは次にジノフよりインドのベンガルールのスタートアップ環境についてご紹介いただきます。ジノフは先ほどの説明にもありましたが、ベンガルールのコンサルティング会社で、ジェトロのグローバルアクセラレーションハブおよび J ブリッジを実施する際のパートナーとして一緒に日本企業をご支援させていただいています。Then Divya-san, please start your presentation about startup situation in Bangalore, India.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Matsuda-san. Can you please confirm if my screen is visible? The presentation. Matsuda-san, is my presentation visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for making time to attend this webinar. I will be briefly talking about Indian startup landscape and also touching upon Bangalore's relevance to the Indian startup ecosystem. India is the third largest ecosystem in the world with a total of 25 to 27,000 active tech startups. These startups are the key drivers of India's socio-economic growth. They play a critical role in improving the overall industry competitiveness and have built unique and innovative solutions across various sectors. We have more than 5,500 startups that have raised funding of a total of $73 billion, reflecting the high level of interest from venture capitalists in India's startups and their potential to generate good return on investment. Besides, India also has more than 3,100 startups that are building solutions leveraging deep technology such as AI, ML, IoT, blockchain, data, big data, robotics, etc. These startups.
Divya, your voice is not clear. Can you just check once, please?
Is it breaking or is it soft?
Soft.
Okay, I'll be a bit louder. Thanks, Prashant.
Thanks.
Yeah, so these startups have grown at a rate of 42% over the past decade, which is faster than the overall growth in the ecosystem. India is also a hub to 89 unicorns and has 174 potential unicorns in the pipeline. In 2022, India added the second highest number of unicorns. 74% of these unicorns were from B2B sector, and a significant pool of these had a focus on SMBs, that is small and medium businesses. Moreover, around 1/3 of the unicorns and potential unicorns are servicing global markets from India. The Indian ecosystem has been successful in consistently harboring interest of institutional investors in the Indian startup ecosystem. This number has been growing consistently, indicating a growing belief of investors across the globe. Bangalore has been a hub to more than 1/4 of India's startups and hence is the epicenter of this startup ecosystem. Also, it has more than 740 MNCs who have established their centers of excellence here in Bangalore. Availability of tech talent is one of the topmost reasons for startups and global companies in choosing Bangalore as their preferred location. With a talent pool of more than 4 lakh people, Bangalore is the 5th most preferred destination in the world for global companies. These factors combined have earned Bangalore the title of Silicon Valley of India. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Back to you, Matsuda-san.
Thank you, Divya さん。それでは、いよいよメインセッションに移ります。まずは、インドのベンチャーキャピタル、バラットファンドのシャム・メノンさんより、インドの気候テックについてお話しいただきます。なお、ご質問がありましたら、Q&A ボックスにご記入をお願いいたします。So, Sham-san, could you start your presentation about the situation of the energy and climate tech in India?
Sure. Thank you, Matsuda-san. Let me try to share the screen. 1 second. Nothing's showing at this point, huh? Wait. Is anything showing or no?
No,
No.
not yet.
It's
No,
not. Okay.
Just please share again.
Second. I'm trying to see why is it not showing. It was showing till now, no?
Yes.
You see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, yes. Thank you all so much for your time. This is okay. My name is Shyam Menon. I represent Bharat Innovation Fund, which is a deep tech focused venture capital fund in India. And one of the areas that we've been working in for the last more than a dozen years is actually climate tech in the country. And we have been looking at this space for a long time. We set up India's first seed fund in the climate space back in 2012, looking at supporting very early stage initiatives in the climate tech space with anything from a couple of $100,000 to $1 million, and learned quite a lot of the problems and issues and opportunities that are available in climate tech in the country. So would love to take you through a high-level view of what the opportunities are and where we see the potential for going forward for climate tech investments in the country. This is just it's a high-level summary. So happy to connect with whoever is on the call who would like to understand better the opportunities in individual sectors. But this is just to give a sense of what the overall opportunity is. Ideally, I mean, if you think of climate tech, you have opportunities in both mitigation and in adaptation. For the longest time, the focus has been on mitigation. Recently, we've now in the last couple of years, 2-3 years, at least last 2 years, at least, been seeing a lot more interest also developing on adaptation and climate resilience. And very, very high level, the mitigation activities seem to be a lot more focused on the urban part of the ecosystem, whereas the resilience related investments and opportunities are more prevalent on the rural side of the ecosystem. And the reason for resilience being more on the rural is because a lot of the people who suffer the worst consequences of climate change tend to be people at the base of the pyramid in India, where their earnings are not as much. So they are the ones who are most affected. For example, farmers in the agri sector, etc., as the as the weather patterns change and agri yields change, similarly, public health issues, I mean, because of changing weather patterns and other related issues, health concerns grow and people at the base of the pyramid tend to get more affected. Whereas a lot more action on the mitigation side, whether you're talking about renewable energy, energy efficiency, whether it is carbon capture, hydrogen, mobility, most of that action tends to be focused more on the urban side, urban part of India. In terms of, very high level views, I think it's, I'm sure you would already know India is a very high producer of carbon emissions after China and the US. It's already the third. It has pretty polluted cities. It has, so there is a huge opportunity here in all of this for bringing in mitigation technologies to reduce everything from greenhouse gases to reducing pollution. So there's a lot of opportunities in general across the space. Now coming to what has changed today to make the opportunity better than what it used to be? One big thing is in climate tech, what we've realized is it was very, very people intensive in terms of solutions and how it was delivered. So the fact that now technology and IoT and sensors, etc., cost of monitoring and managing assets have dropped significantly because of the cost of sensors and the availability of data and the use of cloud, etc. Your ability to offer energy efficiency, energy management solutions in a much more cost-effective manner and a more repeatable manner has made the solutions more viable today versus what it used to be even 5 or 10 years ago. Most of the solutions on climate technology mitigation required a heavy set of people needs on the ground and hardware need on the ground. It was from an economic viability, it was always suspect. But today, with much lower cost of data and monitoring and sensors, you have a much better ability to repeat the solution and make it more economically viable. Then, of course, regulation, another huge area. Whereas there was some supporting regulation in the last 10 years from the time that we started investing in climate tech in India to today, there is a whole lot more supporting regulation, whether it is within agri space, e-mobility, whether it is in renewables, recycling. We even have carbon markets coming back into India later this year. We have a new set of carbon market regulations coming. We have more regulations coming for every single industry to look at reducing carbon emissions, with multiple sectors already calling for net zero plans over the next couple of decades. So there is a lot more momentum, voluntary, involuntary, regulatory driven, non-regulatory driven, all of this happening at the same time in the last few years, making it a lot more viable proposition versus 10, 15 years back when it had to be mostly voluntary. There was limited regulation driving this. So the fact that the ecosystem has evolved, the fact that technology has developed and costs have dropped, and the fact that regulation is in favor is making a lot more of these solutions viable today versus a decade ago. In terms of the opportunity that just we are trying to address, just in a way, it just kind of shows you where the opportunity is in the country. We have a lot of seed funds in India who are helping with the very early stage part of the ecosystem. And you have a lot of private equity funds now coming into the market and who are already in India who have a climate focus as well for growth investing. When we say growth investing, you're talking about typically investments of 20, 30, $50 million and more. Whereas there is still a pretty big missing gap in the middle, which is typically companies need that 5, 10, 15, 20 million to scale, early scale, before the private equity funds come in. And because climate tech has generally got a strong hardware component, the regular existing venture capital funds are generally less keen on it because most of the venture capital ecosystem prefers an asset light and pure software led model. Whereas in climate tech, for your solutions to be really effective, you actually need, you need hardware. You can't do without hardware. And that's one huge learning for us as well. Then where is the gap? I mean, this is just a slide that looks at the explanation of the financing gap. So typically you can get initial funding at the pilot level scale, whether it is in in any of these spaces. But the biggest problem in climate tech compared to internet-led startups, pure digital solutions where you're talking about a blue ocean versus climate tech, is that the end users in this industry tends to be very heavy incumbents. So utility companies, logistics, heavy industries, steel, cement, you name it, right? Power, chemicals, commercial real estate. They are all very, very heavy incumbent sectors where they have tended to be relatively laggards when it comes to adopting new technology. Also, cost of deployment of such technologies into their industries tend to be quite high. And hence, that risk averseness is quite there in that end industry to incorporate new technology. And the second problem in this industry, climate tech versus a pure digital internet-based solution, is that the end users, if you ask them to choose a technology, if you leave the end choice of a technology to a cement or a steel or a utility company or a heavy industry, and you have multiple early stage technologies to choose from, it's a very difficult proposition for that end user because they are not used to taking bets on early stage unproven technology in most cases. So it goes into a decision paralysis in many cases where you are trying to figure out which technology to back because you don't know whether it will work or not when you start rolling it out in a larger scale. So that decision paralysis is something we've seen very significantly in this industry, in climate tech end users, compared to typically whether it is fintech or edtech or any of the other spaces or commerce, regular commerce, where you've seen a lot more penetration of internet kind of solutions versus this sort of climate tech carbon mitigation solutions. We've seen a lot more decision paralysis when it comes to adopting new technologies at the end user level. But what has become better, so we are also figuring out how to solve this problem. What has become better is, of course, as we discussed, the fact that you have a lot more IoT, data capture, analytics, a lot more things that have come in, which allows you to, without depending purely on a human intervention, clearly take data-driven decisions, which is repeatable, which is actually what is leading to more adoption of solutions in this space. Now, this is a slide that kind of shows you how do you grow? What is the pathway for solutions in climate tech? Of course, climate tech is a generalization, but still, having said that, we'll get into the individual sectors in the subsequent slides, but this is generally the passage of a company. So you have your tech development stage, you have your initial product market fit stage. You have what we are defining as early servitization. When we say servitization, what we mean is whatever is the end outcome, whether it is energy efficiency or carbon capture or hydrogen or chemicals, if you're able to package it as a service, that means you're able to integrate your technology back and front and actually create a full solution which offers the end utility as a service. If you, instead of offering a more efficient motor or a pump or a chiller, if you're actually able to offer more efficient heating, cooling, or compressed air, or carbon capture or green hydrogen as a service versus offering a better electrolyzer, especially in the Indian context, I'm sure it is the same in many parts of the world, your adoption potential is potentially far higher if you are able to integrate it all and create a full solution and then offer the green hydrogen or energy efficiency in the form of a utility as a service. So if that enables adoption much more, then then of course the later part is the scale up of servitization and wide scale adoption. In India today, where we are is you have a lot of venture capital that exists on the left side of the spectrum, which is still early stage support, typically 1 to 5 million. But when you are coming to that 5 to 15 to 20 million, in this kind of solutions with strong hardware requirements in these spaces is where typically the financing is still relatively weak. And this is where there's a lot more opportunity for partnerships, especially with corporates / financing companies in Japan who are looking at entering this space. Similarly, on the later part of this journey, when you're talking about scaling up, you have a lot more financing support available on the ground because of the increasing amount of private equity and growth equity funds that have got allocations for climate and green investments. So that is becoming better. So you have a lot more follow-on capital availability now coming, and most large private equity funds now have an allocation. It can be 5%, 10%, 15%, but they have an allocation to support later stage scale up. But they need the pipeline creation is really where the largest gap is for private equity. In terms of what's available in India today, this is an opportunity that is there in the market today. I'm sure in another 2-3 years, this opportunity will also get filled up with a lot more vehicles active. But as of now, this is an area typically Series A+, Series B, C, where you have an opportunity in terms of capital availability for early growth. In a way, it's a pipeline builder for private equity. This is the financing gap in the market. Now, coming to what the areas are, and different spaces. I mean, the spaces may not be anything different from what you would see in Japan. It would be similar. Everything from energy efficiency, food and agri, transportation, renewables, water and waste. These are all the regular spaces that you have in the market. Of course, these are, in some sense, the size of the market is what we've given in the circle here, basis some of the calculations that have happened. So you get a sense of the energy efficiency market, food and agri. Of course, these numbers will change depending upon reports that keep coming out. I mean, this would have been basis a couple of reports that would have come out recently. But yeah, this gives you a sense of what the areas are. And this is all in billions of dollars. So this is a sense of the market that we are looking at. Of course, the transportation market is probably even far bigger. So, but this gives you just an indication of the kind of market size. This slide starts to break it down in a way, a little bit more into depth about what the size of those markets are. So if you look at electric vehicles, how would it get broken down? Typically, from a 3-wheeler commercial fleet to 4-wheeler personal transport to 2-wheelers to buses. So you begin to get a sense of where things are. Of course, these numbers are all going to move up significantly, especially as EV penetration is now starting in a very big way. I mean, this would have been basis about 1.5 years back, a report that would have come and just targets that the country has set. But the way penetration of electric vehicles has already started increasing, we think we'll expect to see a much bigger deployment going forward. Now, having said that, what is the story in electric vehicles? In India, unlike in the West, the basic fundamental difference is the initial driver for electrification is less about somebody being very keen on a green solution. It is more about the fact that because of increasing fuel prices, and India is a huge importer of oil, India barely has any oil. So it has to import pretty much 80 to 85 to 90% of India's oil needs are imported. And because of increasing price of oil, there is definitely a huge petrol and diesel. There's a huge need for logistics industries. Typically on the B2B commercial side, the logistics side, there is a huge need for solutions that reduce that dependence on that increasing fuel price, which is why we are seeing a lot more deployment in electric vehicles starting in India in 2- and 3-wheeler commercial logistics, especially last mile delivery, because the long haul intercity transport, etc. on electric vehicles are yet not that reliable, but the short distance last mile delivery is definitely a huge area where we are seeing massive pickup in the market. Similarly, on the personal mobility side, on the 2-wheeler side, we are seeing a huge pickup. 4-wheelers have started happening over the last year or so. But there will be, of course, there's a huge way to go in India before all this happens. And the charging infra rollout, etc., has just begun in India. The charging density is 1/100th of what it should be in the country. So there is a requirement for the charging infrastructure to scale up over 100x what it is today, if not more. So the density is very, very, very low. You barely have a charger for 1,000 people. So you need a much better charging density in this course of time before EVs become a realistic option for most people. And there are a lot of other challenges. I mean, charging stations, swapping stations are probably a better manner for three-wheeler transport, for example, commercial vehicle, because charging will take a lot of time. And especially three-wheelers, they're not willing to wait. They need to get in and out within a minute or two from a charging station. So swapping might work better for certain kinds of solutions in the country, whereas charging may work better for, say, buses, etc. So there are different modalities in the country, and certain kind of solutions will work better in some locations, in some geographies, in some kinds of transport versus another. Energy efficiency is a space which had struggled for a while, but recently what we have seen is there is a lot more interest, especially when you can offer heating, cooling, etc., compressed air as a service. That's definitely a lot more interest in utility as a service space. Food and agri is a space where now there is a lot more investments over the last 4 or 5 years. In this space, you have relatively less of a problem in terms of availability of capital, especially if you're a startup, because there's a lot of funding now coming for the digitization of agri and supply chain efficiency. But if you look for purely biological kind of solutions where you're looking at new agri input materials and new fertilizers and new pesticides, etc., all of that is a little lesser in terms of funding. But we look at precision agri, supply chains, all of those areas, you definitely have a lot more financing available. Then here you have 3 spaces: captive solar, waste management, water management. Here, naturally, rooftop and captive power, the whole solar transition is happening in a big way. It is no longer in a venture capital kind of ecosystem. It is scaled to the point where you have very, very, very large renewable energy projects, multi-gigawatt players in the market now. So it has become way more mature as an industry, which is fantastic. But solar and wind has matured. But if you look at other industries, other renewables like geothermal, or etc. I mean, all of those, wave, tidal, we are very, very, very early in the game. It is really solar and wind which has scaled, and India has always had a reasonable amount of hydro, but it hasn't, number of hydro projects haven't scaled up again as much because the permitting, regulation, etc. on the hydro side is still takes quite a long time. Then you have, of course, nuclear, but nuclear is, again, doesn't really get counted within the sort of climate tech story today. Although in the rest of the world, nuclear and especially nuclear fusion research, etc., has picked up in a big way, we don't yet have stuff in that space in the country today. Then in India, not as much action yet on that space. Waste management, humongous area, a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential for funding as well. There's a lot of room for new solutions to come in this space, whether it is agri waste, whether it is recycling of plastics, whether it is waste to energy. This is a humongous area, whether it is sustainable aviation fuel you can make from agri waste. This space is a massive space going forward, and there's a lot more potential coming in this space compared to what it used to be. Water management is still quite early in terms of potential opportunities in the country, typically because water is still considered a public good for the most part. So the pricing on water is still limited. But we are seeing, interestingly enough, more companies coming up in industrial water treatment and recycling, where you can take the processed water out of the industrial chemical plant and process it, recover anything of value from it, and then use it back in the process. So you're beginning to see more startups that are trying to address that space as well. This couple of slides here, it just goes on to show you the kind of where the space is in each of these areas, like where is in India, where the opportunities are. So if you look at the left side, this is where the companies are still in very early stages in the Indian startup ecosystem in energy storage, fuel cells, waste heat capture, grid management, hydrogen, still quite early. In the early growth phase is really the energy efficiency space, where you have some proven technology being deployed in a utility as a service model. And of course, scale up and growth financing and later stages where the solar and wind industry are, where you've reached a certain level of maturity. Similarly, in the food agri land use, if you try to look at in terms of stage of evolution of these companies, if you look at areas like low green GHG proteins, alternative foods, vertical and urban farming, biotech and genomics, there is a lot of action, but still at the early stages. If you look at precision agri, farm inputs, quality control, all that is in the growth stages, early growth stages. And then you look at e-commerce and enabling of digitization of agri, you're definitely seeing a lot more companies, and supply chain efficiencies. You're seeing companies that are more on the slightly later stages or the growth phase of these startups. So you have, this is the sort of spread in terms of early, mid, and growth. Mobility, similarly, on the left side, if it's new battery chemistry, EV components, autonomy, all of this is still early, whereas fleets, logistics, charging infra is still in the early growth. But if you look at regular logistics automation, you're not talking about EV logistics, but just logistics automation, digitization of logistics, and getting efficiencies in logistics in general, that is definitely now reached a growth phase. I mean, because you have a lot more companies that have been funded over the last 10 years, which are offering full stack. I mean, not just digitization, they offer the vehicles, they offer software, they offer services to the drivers, they offer services to the end user. I mean, you have complete full stack logistics automation providers. So this is the lay of the land in terms of opportunities within mobility. On the EV side, as you can see, a lot more of the component stuff is still very early stage in terms of Indian startups. Of course, a lot of this is imported now. But over time, we do expect to see a lot more solutions come from India itself. Then in the energy efficiency space, if you take not just energy efficiency, broadly built environment as well, stuff like advanced robotics, residuals management, green concrete, 3D printing, alternatives to plastics. This is stuff still on the left side, which is still early stages. But energy efficiency as a service, waste to value, this is still on the early growth. And if you look at, beyond that, you do have some large waste management companies in the country, which is more traditional waste management, whereas servitization is still on the early growth phase. But on the pure waste management side, you do have some companies which have reached scale, but not necessarily incorporating a lot of new technology and efficiencies yet. So this is where we are. So in this space also, there's a lot of room, especially on the green materials and robotics and etc. spaces. Then this space, which is industrial decarbonization, if you look at really cement, steel, chemicals, even fertilizer, waste, paper and pulp, even power sector outside of solar and wind, a lot of stuff still has to happen. I mean, here, if you look at carbon capture or low carbon fuels or industrial electrification or all of these areas, we are very, very, very new in the country. There is very limited solutions in the market. So especially here, you're talking about decarbonizing heavy industry. There is huge opportunity for Japanese corporates and financing institutions to step in here, because this space is just starting. And especially with the CBAM regulations, which is coming, which is the carbon market entry, taxation that Europe is putting into place, where just starting this October, if you are trying to sell cement or steel or any of these things, core materials into Europe from India or from anywhere, you have to have a carbon price adjustment tax, which is apparently, people are saying it can be as high as even 25%, of the overall cost of the product, what you're selling. So it's a huge deal. So there is a huge interest now within the heavy industrial segment of India to try to find decarbonization solutions for heavy industry, because your ability to export will become hugely constrained, especially to Europe for now. Going forward, I'm sure similar solutions will be, similar regulations and taxation will probably come from other parts of the world as well. And even India itself will start putting regulation on heavy industry. So heavy industrial decarbonization is a huge space for potential for collaboration, especially with Japan, because there's a lot of room for new technologies to come in here. And this is the solution. Yeah, this is the set of solutions that I wanted to put out there.
Thank you so much, Shyam. We have learned that climate tech opportunities in India.
Thank you.
それでは、ここで Shell のアクセラレーションプログラムを実際に受けているスタートアップ2社より話を伺います。まずはプラニステクノロジーズ社です。同社は海中ロボットなどによるインフラの水中検査および AI 分析を行っています。So, Abhijit-san, could you talk about your company and how the acceleration program supports you?
Hi, good morning. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Perfect. Can somebody please confirm once my screen is visible?
Yeah, just go to the presentation mode.
Sure.
Good.
Yep. So, hello, everybody. My name is Abhijit, and I am one of the business head for Planus Technologies. Now, we are pioneers when it comes to the field of marine robotics in India. We were founded in 2015, and over the last 8 years now, we've executed close to 300 plus commercial contracts worldwide. We filed over 30 odd patents, and we are headquartered out of India in Chennai, and we also have offices in Europe and Middle East to cater to those regions. All the products and all the R&D that you see that we've developed has all been in-house, and we are very proud to say that since we are pioneers, we are the only organization in this country who has advanced in the field of marine robotics. Now, what is it that we are trying to resolve through the drones that we've developed, underwater drones? Now, aging infrastructure is a vital problem worldwide. We all know this. Now, assets are built to last for decades together, and these assets need to be maintained and inspected with the right type of technology so that we can ensure they live out their entire lifespan, and they also help in extending their life, extending the longevity of the asset in terms of life. Now, when you talk about structures that are submerged underwater, like bridges, dams, ports, we have oil and gas, we have offshore structures, we have structures that retain water in the downstream side. Now, these are primarily inspected by, majority of them are inspected by using manual divers, human divers that go underwater. Obviously, it's a very big risk because you have a human that is going underwater. That's one. And second is that there are very limited capabilities that these divers have when they are allowed to be underwater just for 30 or 40 odd minutes. Now, that's one challenge. The second is you do have technologies available in the market, but 90% of the technologies or the offshore drones that we're talking are meant for deep offshore oil and gas. They are called work-class ROVs. Now, they happen to be an unfit solution when you talk about nearshore waters. So, and second is they are quite expensive. It's like, the logistics itself is a huge challenge in bringing these drones and, deploying them for small inspection of small structures. And finally, the third challenge in the market that we've seen is reporting. Surprisingly, all the reporting in this industry is still done manually. The best form of digitization we've seen are PDF reports. These are not really smart ways of reporting. Now, this includes North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and so on. To combat these challenges, now Planus has developed an end-to-end solution. Now, what I mean by end-to-end solution is, now, like I said, we are pioneers in the field of marine robotics. So we have developed these drones that go underwater. These drones are integrated and integrated with non-destructive testing sensors, like non-intrusive testing. That is what is required to get deeper insights into asset. So these drones would go underwater, collect data. Once the data gets collected, that gets converted, standardized, and then analyzed to generate deeper insights. So to explain this point further, how the whole technology works is, now there are various types of inspections that are done underwater. So you have visual, you have NDT, you have sonar surveys, you have IoT-based solutions. Then you have aerial drones that get deployed on these assets. Now, these collect a lot of data. Now, since there are various technologies that are involved here, the type of data that gets collected is quite vast in terms of variety. So bringing them on a standard platform is the biggest challenge. Now, our platform is capable of getting all the data, converting it into a single format, and that is where we have our AI that helps in processing the large data sets. But the AI helps us in auto-identifying anomalies, defects, identifying what's wrong with the data, and this helps us in further identifying what kind of challenges we are facing in terms of the assets, and that's how the insights are generated. This is just a short gist in terms of the capabilities of our ROVs. Now, there are a few techniques. This is what makes us unique. One is, apart from visual inspections, we have lasers integrated on the drones that will help in quantifying defects at accuracy, millimeters. When it comes to turbid waters, we can perform 8 out of 10 cases. Planus is very confident in performing this, as in we are very proud in saying this, that if Planus can't do it, we've not seen any other organization in the world who can do this when it comes to turbid waters. Sonar surveys are possible using the same equipment. This is not a USP, but it's just an add-on. We figured out this can be done with the same equipment. Non-destructive testing is what makes us unique. Like I said, the kind of sensors that we've integrated are UTG, that is ultrasonic thickness gauging probes. These help us in identifying corrosion. There is another technology called PEC, pulsed eddy current. This is an advanced NDT that can be performed on the drones. The biggest advantage is it is 3 times faster than the traditional ultrasonic thickness. And also there is no pre-work that is required when you talk about structures that need to be inspected. Like you don't need to remove insulation layers, you don't need to remove marine growth, and so on. The final technique I wanted to showcase is concrete integrity inspections underwater. Above water, this technique is quite common, but underwater, this does not exist in the world today. So what Planus has done is we have developed a sensor that can help you identify concrete integrity underwater. The technique is called UPV, ultrasonic pulse velocity or velocimetry. This sensor is further integrated on the drones, and this helps you now identify concrete integrity that is perennially submerged underwater. These are a few sample reports on what a field test looks like for the concrete integrity and correlation between visual inspections and the results achieved from the UPV sensor. So to summarize our entire proposition, these are a few use cases in the process or the downstream industry that we provide as of today. Terminal inspections, the ports, jetties can be inspected unmanned using ROVs. Fire water tanks. This is one of our biggest propositions when it comes to these tanks, the storage tanks, because a tank cannot be inspected unless you have a downtime in the plant. So what Planus would do is we would, when the plant is in service, when the tanks are filled with water, we would just drop our ROVs inside and attach sensors on our ROVs, and these would perform various types of tests in live conditions. You save on scaffolding cost, you save on downtime, and you also save on avoiding humans entering confined areas. Same goes for water pipelines. These are the existing solutions, and apart this, there is another product under R&D where we are developing an ATEX certified product. Now, these can be deployed on hydrocarbon tanks, hydrocarbon environments like zone 0. So like water tanks, similarly, we can now deploy our ROVs and hydrocarbon tanks. Very recently, we were successful in trying this out in a palm oil tank, and the results were quite promising. Now, the next phase of development is going to enter into hydrocarbon tanks. We are starting with clean fuel today. So, yeah. Now, all of the data or all of the techniques that I showcase now are all about capturing data, right? Because these are hardwares, they capture a lot of data. What happens after you capture data? This is where our the platform that I spoke about of getting data from multiple sources and standardizing it. So these are a few snippets of our platform where the data can be sourced from multiple locations, multiple technologies, multiple vendors. They further get standardized, and then visualization and analysis is performed. So I have a few samples where we have intelligent pigging that is done by third parties, but the standardization and visualization was done on our platform by Planus. This is for a large oil and gas customer in India. This is for one of the oil and gas customers in Netherlands, where the inspections were done using small crawlers that go inside pipelines. Now, these are ammonia and urea lines, and unfortunately, the client were receiving 200 to 500 hours of just raw videos as a result. So this is where we standardized the data and put them on a platform. And with the help of our AI, we were able to auto-identify multiple anomalies. Similarly, for sonar data on a point cloud version, be it a real-time IoT, that has also been integrated. So yes, thank you so much for your patience in hearing me out. I'm happy to have any questions you may.
Abhijit will take the questions towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit-san, for the interesting presentation. それではもう一社のスタートアップ AP ケミからプレゼンいただきたいと思います。同社は廃プラスチックを油に熱分解しリサイクルする技術を持つ企業です。Then Suhas-san, please introduce your company and the experience of the acceleration program.
Thank you, Matsuda-san. I'll just share my screen. I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So we are AP Chemi. Our core focus is to accelerate plastic circularity and decarbonization. We are supported by ecosystems of Shell E4, Act Capital, as well as other ecosystems, including KPMG, Alliance to End Plastic Waste, SASIR, Department of Science and Technology of Government of India, as well as HEC Paris. Our experience with Shell E4 has been extremely positive, and we are really grateful for the opportunities that Shell E4 program brings to us as a startup. We focus on plastic waste. Since the beginning of plastic generation, more than 6.3 million tons of plastic waste has been generated, and less than 1% of this plastic waste has been recycled more than once. So this is a growing problem globally, and it needs to be addressed in its entirety. Not existing solutions for recycling are not able to address the problem in its entirety, and that is where we focus. So if you see what is happening to the plastic waste, less than 9%, these are global numbers. On an average, less than 9% is recycled and more than 91% is not recycled. It is mechanically non-recyclable plastic waste. Even if you recycle the plastic waste mechanically, it leads to mechanically non-recyclable plastic waste, and which eventually either is burned in incineration plant or it is sent to landfills. Even in landfills in various parts of Asia, Africa, landfill fires cause burning of plastic waste. So if we have to dispose the plastic waste that is there in the landfill, we'll have to go for chemical recycling. So chemical recycling of plastic waste is inevitable. Ultimately, if we have to dispose plastic waste without burning, then chemical recycling is the way forward, where we focus as a company. So this is the problem statement that exists, that there is a high dependence on crude oil and petroleum gas by the refinery and petroleum players to produce plastics. These plastics are used by FMCG, and consumer usage generates mixed plastic waste. This mixed plastic waste, more than 90% of it globally goes to landfill or incineration. Even if you take this mixed plastic waste and convert it into oil, this oil has a lot of corrosives and catalyst poisons. That's why it is used as unclean fuels in burners. Because of this presence of corrosives and catalyst poisons, refineries and petrochemical companies are not able to use this as a substitute to crude oil, and that's what stops the circularity. The way we solve this problem is that we can take mixed plastic waste or contaminated pyrolysis oil, and we can push it through our technologies that remove the corrosives and catalyst poisons from pyrolysis oil. For example, the core of pyrolysis oil impurity problem is chlorine, and this is like 80% of problem is presence of chlorine impurities in pyrolysis oil as well as plastic waste. Our technology guaranteed removes around 94% to 99.7% of chlorine impurities. We remove somewhere around 95 to 99% of oxygen impurities, as well as bromine, silica, nitrogen, sulfur, metal, and acidic impurities. So after removal of these impurities from the pyrolysis oil, we are able to produce a purified pyrolysis oil, which we've developed proofs of concepts wherein it has been accepted by pilot scale petrochemical plants to produce sustainable aviation fuel like jet fuel, production of circular naphtha that can be downstream used for production of circular plastics and sustainable chemicals. So basically, we take up post-consumer and landfill plastic waste as well as biomass waste and push it through our pyrolysis and oil purification technologies to produce the required quality of oil that can be used as a feedstock for production of circular plastics, sustainable chemicals, as well as hydrogen and sustainable fuels. Looking at few of the use cases that we can discuss, we have supplied plants for conversion of multi-layer packaging waste into high quality liquids. Multi-layer packaging including polyethylene terephthalate, PVC, and aluminum foil mixed with other polyolefins we can process to produce high quality liquids from such waste. We have also converted mixed municipal solid waste segregated plastic into high quality liquids. So typically this is how the plastic waste looks like when it comes from landfills in Africa. Then it is shredded, then it goes through some pre-processing, and then after it is processed in our pyrolysis plants, which are SCADA operated, we are able to produce this quality of pyrolysis oil. We also have done bunch of assignments in biomass pyrolysis. We have licensed technology and supplied plants for production of almost Euro 6 grade diesel and petrol from biomass waste. This diesel has been used exclusively for production of electricity in generators as well as fuel in steam boilers, and the project is in process of expanding now. So we as a company have 310 man-years of combined experience in pyrolysis. Our technology has converted 179 million kilograms of plastic into pyrolysis oil over 1.3 million hours of plant operation. Our global clients include petrochemical, FMCG, packaging companies, engineering companies from Europe, UK, North America, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And we are also focused on developing our own 50-ton per day plant for production of oil from plastic waste that would otherwise end up in landfills. We have supplied 47 plants in plastic to oil industry. We have global assignments up to 300 tons per day plastic to oil, and we have strong portfolio of patents in pyrolysis as well as oil purification. Our efforts in this space have been recognized by various awards. Our portfolio of patent focuses on pyrolysis as well as oil purification. We have 2 patents granted in India, 1 in South Africa, and also we have protected our IP strategically at locations like USA, Canada, UK, Europe, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. We have collaborations with Technip Energies. Technip Energies is a global engineering giant that has given a press release 3 months ago that they would be marketing our technologies. We have collaboration with Aalborg University. With Aalborg University and Plastic Center Denmark, we raised recently, last month only, $2.3 million for a 3-year research project on production of hydrogen from plastic waste as well as biomass waste. And we also sponsor research students at Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. The traction that we have developed includes that the purified pyrolysis oil samples produced using our technology have been approved by 7 global petrochemical companies for downstream production of circular plastics as well as sustainable chemicals. We've received letters of intent from various global petrochemical companies as well as FMCG companies for offtake of end products. And now our focus is to raise funds and scale up the operations. We believe we have most capable team in this domain. I have 47 years of I have experience of 12 years and developing 47 plants in pyrolysis. Vijay has experience of 40 years in engineering as well as EPC in petrochemical companies. Aruna has 15 years experience in operations. We have very well knowledgeable board of advisors, and we also have team of engineers including electrical, process, mechanical, safety, automation engineers, and so on. So we are focused on sustainable development goals 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. Our as far as fundraising traction is considered, since 2007 till 2021, the company was bootstrapped. In 2022, we raised seed round of $300,000, and recently last month we raised around $2.5 million for production of green and blue hydrogen from biomass and plastic. Our ongoing fundraise is we are looking at pre-series of $1.5 million and series A of $15 million in order to develop a 50-ton per day plastic to chemicals plants near Mumbai, and then also expand globally so as to prevent landfilling of the plastic waste. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you, Suhas-san, for your presentation. それでは Q&A セッションに移りたいと思います。ご質問がありましたら、質問先を明記した上で Q&A ボックスにご記入ください。可能な限り英語でご記入いただけますと幸いです。またちょっと時間が押しておりますので、もしご質問がある方はお早めにご記入をお願いいたします。すでに一つ質問が来てますので、そちらを回答させていただきたいと思います。Now we'd like to move on to the Q&A session. So there are 2 questions from the Q&A box. First one for Bharat Fund Shamsan. In the Q&A box, you mentioned that solar and wind energy production has matured in India. I'd like to specifically know about offshore wind energy production. My understanding that it is too early in India. Can you throw some light on this? And just to add, please let me know about the hybrid option of floating solar plus offshore wind as well.
So offshore wind is definitely quite early. It's not, I mean, it's just beginning in the country at this point. So, I mean, we don't have, I mean, as a venture fund, it's not a space we would look at because it's too too capital intensive. So we've not done any deep dive in that space in terms of the potential, but it's definitely heavy infra. There seems to be a regulation coming, which is helpful for offshore wind. So there definitely will be potential going forward, but as we are more of a fund on the early stages of technology, doing that 5 to 10 mil investments, this is not a space where we are potentially likely to work on. So we've not spent enough time to look at the opportunity. Floating solar, you mentioned, we've seen a few projects, but somehow nothing seems to have scaled in that space, the floating solar space. There are a few projects which we've seen over the last 5-10 years. Not quite sure why they have not scaled. I'm sure there are potential reasons, but what we've seen scale definitely is the grid scale projects, the rooftop commercial and industrial rooftop solar projects. Residential solar has also not picked up in India because residential electricity tariffs are still very low. It's the industry and commercial users who subsidize residential electricity consumption in India. So from a residential user perspective, the solar use case is still not fully there. And especially as net metering is not completely active, in many places, net metering has still been an issue, and your ability to also sell the power back to the grid when you have excess capacity is all in a state of flux, with multiple states not being able to do that properly. So that has been a reason why uptake of residential solar has been lesser. But floating solar has been around. We've seen a few projects, but it hasn't scaled in the country yet.
Thank you. Thank you. And Piyush-san, do you have any idea on mind?
Oh, yes. I was just probably adding to Shyam, and this is Piyush from Shell 4 again. But what I'll be saying is more from my own analysis. I don't speak on behalf of Shell here in this case. It's a very interesting question, offshore wind, right? And one of the things is India is not, with a pinch of salt, of course. If you go to Norway and the UK, where offshore wind is proliferating, the wind speeds are generally over 8.5 meter per second. Whereas India, you'll see the averaging is 5.5 to 6, and that too in very specific areas like the Tamil Nadu coast or the KGD6 coast or the Gujarat coast. Otherwise, the wind speed is against the capital you invest for offshore, right? You do the dredging and then you lay down the transmission, which is an additional capex as opposed to a normal traditional onshore wind plant where you have all the other facilities there, which makes a kind of a viability, I would say, challenging. And that's why you would see that the 1 gigawatt tender, which has been there around for about 3 years, 4 years now, we are still trying to, I think, there is effort from every corner to make it a bit viable. And I am hopeful as more technologies like the blade size and the powertrains improve, this space should pick up. So it's more about timing than anything else. That's my personal opinion, humble opinion, modest knowledge. I mean, of course, Shyam, you are there for so many years, you know things much better. But yeah, that's my 2 cents to it.
Thank you. Thank you for the Shyam-san and Piyush-san. And the already one question is answered by Hassan. So I'd like to ask to Shell that have you any Japanese startups approached Shell, or has Shell had any interaction with any startups from Japan?
Yeah, Piyush, would you like to take this up?
Sure, Prateek. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, as of now, we haven't interacted with too many Japanese startups. And probably, yes, I find this as a great starting point that if we can look at a few really good Japanese startups, we are very open to interact and find collaboration opportunities with them. We do look at international startups that are doing incredible work out there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I understand.
I've
And,
also provided my email ID, so people can access it if they want to reach out to me for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And this might be the last question, but for the Brannings and AP Chemie, what kind of business collaboration and in which fields of service have you had with holding companies or in the future?
Abhijit, would you like to take it up?
Sorry, I missed your question. Could you please repeat that? Apologies.
Okay, so what kind of business collaboration and which fields of service have you had with the holding companies or in the future?
Sure. So at the moment, we are present in Europe and Middle East, and the kind of organizations that we are working with are oil and gas companies, process, petrochem, and then we have a couple of municipalities also that we work with. Now, talking about Japan, it's a very interesting space. We did a very deep research regarding the country's dynamics. We would like to initiate our conversations with a few of the hydropower plants in that region. Apart from hydropower plants, we would also like to speak with a couple of heavy industries, the EPC industries, the heavy engineering industries. Now, this is all of these are apart from petrochemical and oil and gas.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So we have no more time left. So I'd like to end the Q&A session at this point. Thank you for answering the questions. 以上で本日のセッションはすべて終了となります。長時間お付き合いいただきありがとうございました。それでは最後に我々のパートナーであるジノフのディビアさんに閉会挨拶をお願いしたいと思います。ディビアさん、so please give closing remarks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the audience and all the speakers as well for sparing time, and especially Mr. Shyam for highlighting why it is a great time to adopt climate tech and highlighting the use cases and market size of different sectors and key areas of interest for our audience. Thank you, Shell, for sharing your framework of working with the startups, leveraging these startups for improving the climate tech space. And also to AP Chemie and Planis for showcasing your startups here on this platform. In case anyone in our audience wants to reach out, you can write to Zinov or Jetro, and we will be happy to connect. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, Divya. I have a question that has been asked. Do you want me to answer this, or should we take it up one-on-one?
Prashant, what should we do?
Abhijit, 30 seconds.
Sure. So yes, we do have a very strong proposition when it comes to offshore wind. We are already working with a couple of O&M companies in the northwest of Europe, from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Regarding the inspections, we have a unique proposition where we can perform a non-intrusive test on the turbines, which will also help them avoid an entire vessel being chartered to go all the way to the location and then, performing these inspections. It's a complete remote proposition. I am happy to discuss this in detail if you would, get in touch.
Great. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you to all the audience as well. Have a great day.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. 以上で本日のイベントは終了となりますが、Zoom を退出される際に本日のイベントのアンケート画面が出てまいります。1分程度の簡単な内容ですので、何卒ご協力いただければ幸いです。それでは、本日のウェビナーは以上となります。本日は誠にありがとうございました。Thank you everyone for today. I hope to see you again soon.